Biden projected to be the next president of the United States. Celebrations erupt across the country, from the White House to both coasts. After days of counting, Pennsylvania puts him over the top. Joe Biden now set to be the 46th president of the United States and planning to speak tonight in a primetime address. Kamala Harris makes history, the first woman ever to become vice president-elect.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
The emotional reaction from women of color across the country. President Trump defiant, with no plans to concede. On the golf course when the call was made, he now says the election is far from over. Another outbreak inside the White House. The president's chief of staff tests positive for COVID as the country sees another day of record cases. Texas hitting 1 million. The major city now back into lockdown. A startling new prediction from the CDC and the president-elect's plans to fight the virus. Tonight, the celebrations and the challenges before us as a new presidency is set to begin.
This is NBC Nightly News. Decision 2020. Here is Lester Holt.
Say awesomeness in Brazilian language.
The Trump era is coming to an end. 4 days after polls close across the country, Joe Biden has emerged tonight as the winner and president-elect of the United States. NBC News projecting the former.
How do you say president-elect in your language? How do you say president-elect in your language? El Presidente.
Celebrations in the streets of many American cities over a history-making election that will make Kamala Harris the country's first woman and first woman of color vice president. President-elect Biden scheduling a prime-time address to a divided nation. Our team is covering it all. We start with Kristen Welker.
Yeah, California.
There was jubilance as people flooded the streets today, celebrating a new era in American leadership, from the White House to the West Coast. All marking a history-making moment. Joe Biden poised to become the 46th president of the United States, the first person to defeat an incumbent president in nearly 3 decades. Kamala Harris is the first woman and person of color to earn the title of vice president-elect. Biden reaching the 270 electoral votes needed with a win in the state where he was born, Pennsylvania.
We can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden has been elected President of the United States.
For the nation, it is a moment of clarity after a bruising campaign and 4 days of uncertainty about who had won the election, with vote counts slowed by a surge in mail-in ballots due to the pandemic. Biden, who will address a deeply divided nation tonight, will call for unity and healing, according to his aides. In his first statement today, saying he is honored and vowing, "I will be a president for all Americans, whether you voted for me or not," striking a similar tone overnight.
We have to put the anger and the demonization behind us. It's time for us to come together as a nation to heal.
Harris posting her celebratory conversation with her new boss.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
Reaction to the news poured in from Democrats and some Republicans, including a call from former President Obama, whom Biden served with for 2 terms as vice president. Obama saying in a statement, "I encourage every American to give him a chance and lend him your support." House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying, "Today marks the dawning of a new day of hope for America." And while there was no traditional concession call from President Trump, some Republicans did congratulate Biden. Senator Mitt Romney, who unsuccessfully challenged Obama and Biden in 2012, called Biden and Harris people of goodwill and admirable character. In 1973, Biden became the country's youngest senator. Now he's on the cusp of becoming the oldest president. He'll be 78 when he's sworn into office. And while Biden will face unprecedented challenges, a pandemic, an economic crisis, and country riven by racial strife, Biden says he's ready to get to work.
The purpose of our politics, the work of the nation, isn't to fan the flames of conflict, but to solve problems, to guarantee justice, to give everybody a fair shot, and to improve the lives of our people. We may be opponents, but we're not enemies. We're Americans.
Kristen joined us now from Wilmington. What can we expect tonight, Kristen?
Well, Lester, people are energized and elated here. We expect to hear from Vice President-elect Harris and President-elect Biden, a night that'll be capped off by fireworks.
Kristen Welker, thank you. We will, of course, bring you the president-elect's speech live tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. President Trump says he'll fight the outcome, claiming falsely that he won the election and plans to mount even more legal challenges. Hallie Jackson is at the White House with that.
President Trump was not at the White House when he learned he'd lost it. He was golfing in Virginia, driven home past his critics cheering. Tonight, it is over for him, although he doesn't want it to be. Defiant in defeat, insisting he'll fight the results in court starting Monday. But
starting Monday.
Evidence of widespread fraud in this election.
The guy's lazy.
It's illegal. It's unconstitutional.
Those challenges seem likely to fail. Advisors appearing to push a PR case more than a legal one. Now, the president's campaign manager wants allies to stay at the ready in case they're needed at protests. But the blame game is beginning, with multiple sources telling NBC News of finger-pointing. Many aides already looking for their next jobs. The president himself insisting earlier, "I won the election by a lot." He did not win at all, as he rejects the reality he's feared.
If I lose to him, I don't know what I'm going to do. I will never speak to you again.
Winning is easy. Losing is never easy. Not for me, it's not.
The president's still in charge for the next 75 days, a period set to be dominated by the growing pandemic that's infected more than 9 million people, including now his own chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and 4 other White House and campaign aides, according to sources familiar with the diagnoses. It's unlikely President Trump will call President-elect Biden soon or invite him to the White House, as is tradition. He becomes the first incumbent to lose office in nearly 3 decades after a tenure in which he promised unity but fanned flames of division and governed by grievance, often erratically. He's been investigated, impeached, embattled, and adored by his base, with 70 million Americans voting for him, stamping the Trump brand on a reshaped Republican Party, now grappling with what its future holds.
Hallie, what else could the transition hold?
Well, it's possible that the president, who's now a lame duck, could shake up staff, Lester, perhaps firing top officials. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you. The nation remains deeply divided, but for Biden's supporters, today was for celebration. Stephanie Gosk has more on that from Philadelphia.
Moments after the election was called, the people who gave Joe Biden a victory started celebrating.
It's the election of our lifetime. It impacts our future so much, and it just means so much that it's happening. We did it. We did it.
On the streets of the largest cities where protests dominated the summer, today, a party.
We've been waiting for this for 4 years, so this is the release of all that energy. It's really awesome.
Crowds outside the White House. Dancing in Atlanta. In President Trump's hometown, New York City, Biden supporters shouted out their windows.
It's one of the great days in American history.
And at times burst into song. In Pennsylvania, there was pride that the votes cast here put Biden over the top. From the Capitol in Harrisburg
Harrisburg, PA.
to Philadelphia's City Hall.
We're from New Jersey. We came here to celebrate.
We should have went to Capitol today.
Proud Americans. Why come to Philadelphia? Because Philly is where it happened. Philly made it happen.
Perhaps they don't know that President Trump remains defiant, vowing to challenge the results in court. Perhaps they don't care.
There's pride among Democrats in this state tonight. The mayor of the city where Joe
Yeah,
Biden was
what?
born stood outside his family home today and told the crowd,
Yes.
we have a president from Scranton.
Penn University.
Lester, back to you.
All right, Stephanie Gosk in Philadelphia tonight. Thank you. Let's bring in Chuck Todd now, NBC News political director and moderator of Meet the Press. Chuck, it was that last batch of mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania that put Biden over the top, right?
It was. It finally put him outside the automatic recount margin. And while it's still possible when all the votes are counted in provisionals, it could drop below there, but it finally met a threshold. But this was such an unusual election for us to have to navigate and call here, because we actually were mathematically there to declare Joe Biden the president in some ways, knowing he could get there, even though we didn't know the states that would get him there. It was just an interesting and unusual way that we had to unpack these election results.
So when the votes are all counted, what are we looking at in terms of size of victory and how it will affect Joe Biden's way of governing?
Well, look, I think there's a number of ways you could look at it and say this is a large, impressive Democratic victory. Not many Democratic presidents get a majority that often, and so in some ways it's a big vote. Then again, it was also very competitive. I mean, I look at this election and say that the number one takeaway is 2016 wasn't a fluke. In many ways, Joe Biden narrowly won an election that Hillary Clinton narrowly lost, and pattern-wise, it was the same way. But I think the mandate is very simple. It's healing this nation, whether it's healing the divisive politics of this country or the virus. That, to me, is the mandate voters sent Joe Biden.
All right, Chuck, thank you. And for much more on this historic election, join Chuck tomorrow morning for Meet the Press. The president-elect has been clear about the top item on his agenda, battling the coronavirus. Jeff Bennett now on how Biden plans to jumpstart his plan as early as this week.
Yeah.
President-elect Joe Biden promising
Okay,
a packed day one agenda.
They've given us a mandate for action on COVID, the economy, climate change, systemic racism.
Okay, I hear you.
At the top of his
Control,
list,
we're watching
combating the
this.
coronavirus crisis.
Let's wait till the commercials come up soon.
On day one, we're going to put our plan to control this virus into action.
Biden says he wants to create a national COVID strategy right away, urging governors to mandate mask wearing, creating a plan to distribute vaccines and expand COVID testing. Campaign sources telling NBC News that Biden is expected to
Should speak in your Portuguese language or say something funny in Portuguese.
Boost for Obamacare, with the Affordable Care Act facing
Okay,
a
I
Supreme
will.
Court challenge.
Takes 3 seconds, okay. Okay, I'm going to.
With pre-existing conditions.
What time is it right now?
I promise you, it will not be.
Okay.
On immigration, Biden has called for an immediate halt on most deportations for 100 days and says he'll create a task force to reunite migrant families. When it comes to climate change, Biden says he'll bring the U.S. back into the Paris Climate Agreement.
I've laid out how, in fact, I'm going to get us to net zero emissions in the United States of America by 2050.
All while promising policies to tackle racial and social injustice.
The names of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake, Walter Wallace, they're not going to be soon forgotten by me, not by anyone in this country.
With a nation divided, a pledge to push unity.
It's time for us to come together as a nation to heal. It's not going to be easy, but we have to try.
Jeff, what do we know about the president-elect's transition plans?
Well, Lester, Joe Biden's transition officially launches on Monday. The pandemic will be its primary
Okay,
focus.
All right, Jeff, thanks very much.
Okay, the commercial is almost here. Just wait 3 seconds.
The first woman and woman of color
3
on a
minutes.
winning national ticket. This victory emotional for so many. Rahima Ellis tells us more.
Kamala Harris making history.
We did it, Joe.
And inspiring women across the country.
A black woman as a vice president, I can't even express, how amazing this feels to be represented.
Your thoughts about the history that Kamala Harris is making now?
For me, it's a chance to say for all people, anything's possible.
Harris, the first female vice president-elect and a woman of color.
It is really exciting to finally see representation in the highest office of the nation.
It's amazing for our country, again, not only to have a woman, but to have a minority in the office to help get our country back on track.
She is the first woman of color vice president. She literally is going to change the future of our country.
Harris is the daughter of immigrants, her father from Jamaica, her mother from India.
My mother used to have a saying, and she would say to me, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things, but make sure you're not the last.
The 56-year-old who graduated from Howard University says being a prosecutor was her calling. She was the first black woman to become Attorney General in California before going to the Senate, where she earned a reputation for her prosecutorial skills.
I'm asking you a very direct question, yes or no?
Harris built her career on working, fighting, and following her mother's advice.
She's Indian, and I'm Indian.
12-year-old Anjali says she wants to run for office too.
Now that she's done it, I feel like there's a path for that. When you do get that one person, you feel like
they're your best friend almost, and they're guiding you and they're helping you, even though they might not even know you. And so, like, that is really, really special.
It sure is. Kamala Harris paving the way for the next generation. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, Philadelphia.
When we come back, the startling surge in COVID and the state that just hit 1 million cases.
Texas. Texas just hit 1 million. And cut 3